Jack rode home broken by drought, then heard a woman crying from a dead tree in the desert. Saving her meant risking his ranch, his daughter, and old wars that never truly ended. When hatred is tradition, what happens when one man chooses mercy instead? And how far can a single act of kindness really travel across enemy lines? Hey there, folks. Before we dive into this tale of dust, danger, and unexpected kindness out in the wild Arizona wastelands, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from right now? Is it a cozy spot in the city, or maybe out under the stars like our characters? And what time is it showing on your clock? Drop a comment below, and if you're enjoying these stories, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next adventure. All right, let's saddle up and get into it. The sun blazed over the barren wastelands of Arizona, painting the twisted mesquite trees in shades of blood and gold. Jack Harlan, a weathered rancher nearing 50, rode his bay mare along the old wagon trail, his mind heavy with the burden of yet another failed roundup. The drought had taken everything from him, his cattle, his hope, even the laughter of his young daughter back home. He was returning with empty hands and a heavier heart when a low, broken moan cut through the dry wind like a knife. "It hurts." The voice was weak, female, soaked in a kind of pain no animal could imitate. Jack yanked hard on the reins. His horse snorted nervously. Up ahead, bound with her arms and legs stretched wide to the gnarled branches of a massive dead cottonwood tree, was a woman. Her arms were spread apart, wrists and ankles tied with coarse rope that had bitten deep into her flesh. Blood trickled from shallow cuts along her forearms, marks that looked deliberate, ritualistic. She wore what remained of traditional Apache clothing, a buckskin blouse adorned with intricate turquoise and red beadwork, fringes swaying gently, and a knee-length skirt with tassels and geometric patterns that spoke of ceremonies long forgotten. Her long, dark hair hung in tangled strands across her face, but her eyes, dark, fierce, though clouded with agony, found his. Jack froze in the saddle. Every instinct screamed danger. Apache raids had scarred this land for decades. White settlers whispered of Geronimo's warriors, of scalps and fire. This could be a trap, a lure meant to draw him in, bandits or worse waiting among the rocks. He scanned the horizon, nothing but drifting dust and silence. Still, her gaze held him, not pleading, but enduring, as if she had already accepted whatever fate awaited her. Slowly, he dismounted, boots crunching against the gravel. "Ma'am," he said, his voice hoarse from dust and disuse, "who did this to you?" She tried to speak, but pain stole her breath. After a moment, she managed, "Raiders, Mexicans, they took my brother, left me for the vultures." Her English was broken, accented but clear enough. "They think Apache women break easily." Jack's jaw tightened. He knew that kind of outlaw, men who preyed on the vulnerable, using old hatreds as an excuse. He looked at the ropes, at how they cut into her skin. Something twisted in his chest, a memory of his wife, Sarah, dying slowly of fever 2 winters ago while he was away driving cattle. He had come home too late. That helplessness had never left him. He should ride on. It was safer, smarter, but her eyes reminded him of Sarah's at the end, resigned, yet still holding a spark of life. With a curse under his breath, Jack drew his knife. The blade flashed in the dying light. The woman tensed, bracing for the worst. Instead, he stepped closer and began cutting the ropes from her wrists. "Stay still," he murmured. "This is going to hurt." She did not scream when the rope snapped, though her body trembled. When her arms fell free, she collapsed forward. Jack caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her gently to the earth. She was lighter than she looked, burning with fever, her skin clammy. Up close, he saw bruises blooming along her ribs, dried blood on her lips. "You're gonna be all right," he said, convincing himself more than her. He tore strips from his bandana and bound her wrists as best he could, then found his canteen and poured water between her cracked lips. She drank greedily, coughing. "Why?" she whispered when she could speak. "You, white man, most would have left me, or worse." Jack looked away, toward the horizon where his ranch lay miles distant. "I had a wife once," he said quietly. "She needed help. No one came." He met her eyes again. "I figured I'd do things different." Her name was Niamana, Morning Star. She was Chiricahua, separated from her small group during a clash. The raiders had taken her brother for ransom and left her as a warning. "Don't come near our roads." She spoke little after that, saving her strength, but her gaze never left him, cautious, grateful. Jack helped her onto the horse, sitting behind her to hold her steady. The ride back to the ranch was slow. Every jolt drew a soft gasp from her. By the time they reached the weather-worn cabin, night had fallen, and the stars burned sharp as broken glass overhead. His 8-year-old daughter, Elle, came running at the sound of the horse. "Papa, who's that?" "Someone who needs help, sweetheart." Jack carried Niamana inside and laid her on the spare cot by the stove. Elle brought a blanket without being asked, her small hands gentle. For 3 days, Jack cared for her, cleaned her wounds with whiskey, brewed willow bark tea for the fever, fed her broth when she could keep it down. Elle sat nearby, singing soft lullabies she had learned from her mother, the same ones that once soothed her own nightmares. Niamana listened with half-closed eyes, a faint smile touching her lips at the sound of the child's voice. On the 4th morning, the fever broke. Niamana sat up stronger, though still weak. She watched Jack across the table as he repaired a bridle. And right here, as Niamana starts to mend and the tension builds toward what's coming next, pause with me for a second. Where are you listening from in this big world? Maybe from Gorakhpur like our friend Ravi, or somewhere far off? What's the time ticking away to right now? If this story's pulling you in like a good old Western should, show some love with a like and subscribe to keep these tales rolling your way. Now back to the ranch. "You could have turned me in," she said softly. "Claimed a reward. Many would have." Jack shook his head. "No reward's worth a man's soul." She studied him for a long moment. Then, reaching into a small pouch on her belt that Jack had returned to her, she drew out a beaded amulet, a small turquoise stone wrapped in sinew and feathers. "This is for protection," she said. "My mother gave it to me. Now it's yours." Jack hesitated, then took it. The stone felt warm in his palm. "Thank you." That afternoon, riders appeared on the ridge, 4 armed men, the same raiders who had left her for dead. They shouted demands. "The woman, or the ranch burns." Jack stepped onto the porch with his rifle. Niamana stood beside him, holding a borrowed pistol, steady despite her trembling. Elle hid inside, peering through the window. The leader laughed. "Hand her over, rancher. She's worth more to us alive." Jack's voice rang clear across the yard. "She's under my roof now. If you want her, you'll have to go through me." A tense silence. The leader raised his weapon. Before he could fire, Niamana spoke loudly, in Apache. Her words were sharp, commanding. The men froze. She continued, voice rising, pointing toward Jack. Whatever she said, it struck deep. Slowly, the leader lowered his gun, muttering curses. The raiders turned their horses and rode away. Jack looked at her. "What did you say to them?" "That you saved my life," she replied, simply. "That to harm you is to harm me, and that my people do not forget kindness." They stood in silence as the dust settled. Elle ran out and hugged her father's leg. Niamana knelt and gently touched the girl's hair. "Your mother would be proud," she whispered to Jack. Days later, when Niamana was strong enough to travel, she prepared to leave. Jack walked with her to the edge of his land, where her brother's band waited in the distance, shadows on horseback. "You could stay," Jack said quietly. "There's plenty of room. Elle likes you." Niamana smiled, soft and sad. "My place is with my people, but I will carry your name in my heart, Jack Harlan, and if you ever need help, call the Chiricahua. We remember." She pressed the amulet back into his hand, insisting he keep it. Then she mounted the horse he had lent her and rode toward her people. Jack watched until she became a dot on the horizon. Elle slipped her hand into his. "We'll see her again, Papa." He looked at his daughter, then at the vast sky above. "Maybe not," he said, "but kindness doesn't need to be seen again to matter. It changes things anyway." That night, as the stars wheeled overhead, Jack sat on the porch with the cool turquoise stone against his chest. For the first time in years, the weight on his heart felt lighter. Not gone, but shared. In a land marked by hatred and hardship, one small act had bridged worlds. And somewhere out there, a woman called Morning Star carried that same light forward. Because sometimes the most unthinkable thing a man can do is simply choose to care. And in that choice, hope finds its way back into the world. Whew, what a ride that was, bridging divides in the Old West with a simple act of humanity. Before we wrap this up, tell me in the comments, where did you catch this story from, and what's the time where you are? If it touched you like it did me, give it a like and subscribe for more stories that remind us kindness can change everything. Thanks for listening.